You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode
will be touched for the very first time in FAB Facts.
You already know what I'm going to be watching in the Randomiser.
And we reach the end of the road with Brian Cox and Robin Ince.
That's all coming up in Pod 113
of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Rock and roll!
That was possibly the coolest intro we've ever had. Now, what has happened? What have we done to deserve this fab blessing?
Just outside my little recording booth here is the rest of my garage, which is also my son's music room. And just as I was setting up, he went, "Here, Dad, have a listen to this," and blasted out the opening few bars to the Thunderbirds theme.
Beautifully done.
Yeah.
Really nice.
That set me thinking, but we'll come back to that in a little while because I do think we should at least introduce ourselves before we carry on.
Gosh, yes. Good, of course. Right. Well, do you want to do that first or shall I do that first? I mean, you could do it. Do you want to go? You start.
I'm Richard James.
And I'm Jamie Anderson. And this is the Gerry Anderson podcast. And later you'll also be hearing from Chris Dale.
Yes, that's true. We're here for the next hour and a half or so talking all things Gerry Anderson. We've got the amazing Randomiser coming up a little later on. We've got emails and Facebook messages and tweets from all our lovely Podsterons because they've been sending in their messages to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast, tagging him, I'm Jamie Anderson, me, Richard N. James, and him over there, Chris Dalek. And they've been very busy on our Facebook group and we'll be popping in a little later to see what they've been up to. What, apart from all that, Jamie, else do we have coming up?
Probably some news about some things and an interview.
Right.
With Professor Brian Cox and Robin of Ince.
Yeah, great.
I don't know why I keep calling him Robin of Ince.
I don't know why.
It's like Robin of Sherwood, I think, isn't it? Robin Ince.
Yeah.
And that's
it.
FAB
Great.
Facts.
What?
FAB Facts. FAB Facts.
Okay. So I was hoping you'd forgotten. But anyway, back to that little musical insert at the beginning there from my son, Toby. I want to know, Podsterons, can you play any Anderson theme on any instrument? And the more imaginative the instrument, the better. If you can, record a little something for us and send it in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk and we will play it out next time. So that's any Gerry Anderson theme on any instrument. Send it in.
Gosh, I'm now hoping for Space Precinct on the kazoo.
Yeah, Stingray on the kitchen sink.
Space 1999 on the spoons.
Yeah, Captain Scarlet on the dustbin lids. That's got to be done, hasn't it?
Nice. And, Terrorhawks on the panpipes for me. Actually, Richard, am I allowed to enter this competition?
What?
I know it's not a competition, but can I enter it?
Have you got a little something for us then?
Well, I think I can play Fireball XL5 on the pianoforte.
Well, okay, yep. Send it in, Jamie.
The only problem is that my piano is really, really out of tune and actually is a bit broken now.
There's a phrase, isn't there? What is it about a bad workman?
Oh, I see. Well, no. I had an amazing, creepy experience the night. I was watching something sort of horror-based on the telly, and suddenly I heard cling, and it was one of the strings snapping in the piano.
Nice.
And then the harmonics of it making the whole rest of the string sort of vibrate.
Spooky.
It was really, really spooky. Anyway, so yes, you can expect maybe an out-of-tune version of Fireball XL5, possibly.
Well, send it in, and obviously, I'll be vetting every entry that we get, so if it passes muster, it might make an appearance.
Okay, well, I'll do my best to pass your muster. Well, I'm preparing to do that.
Yeah.
Shall we crash straight into some FAB Facts?
I was hoping you'd never ask.
Rude.
Now, time for this week's FAB Facts.
FAB Facts, which Richard loves a lot.
I mean, it's good that it's early because we get it out of the way, don't we? And then we can carry on.
What's that phrase? Eat that frog. Is that what they say? It's like a
Do
motivational thing. Yeah, it's like get the most horrible thing out the way first, and then you can look forward to the rest of the day. And that's how you feel about this. Thanks, Richard. Well, there's lots of other podcast stuff coming up after we've got this out of the way, but this is FAB Facts. I've got a book of FAB Facts. Richard's going to shout FAB as I flick through the pages, and I'm going to read a FAB Fact where I stop. Are you ready?
Oh, yes.
Then here we go.
Fab.
Oh, we got a long way through today.
I heard.
Right. Richard James.
Jamie Anderson.
I'm about to be quite divisive.
Again?
Yeah. And this is not about Joe 90.
Oh, okay. Go on.
I'm just letting the dog out the cat flap. Go on, there you go. There he goes.
Bye.
So, not Joe 90 divisive. Possibly even worse.
Uh-oh. You're not talking Season 1, Season 2 of Space 1999, are you?
Even worse than that.
What?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, here we go. Virgin Trains.
Oh, wow, don't get me started on Virgin Trains.
No, well, that's what I was worried about. Please don't start because, we're not praising or admonishing said company or its founder or anything else. So let's just put that to one side.
All right.
Virgin Trains in 2002 did something rather special.
Did they? Did they run on time?
Richard, I thought we were going to leave this by. Can you not, please?
Did they have the required amount of carriages?
Anyway, Richard, as you may or may not know, Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group and Virgin Trains and all that other stuff, is a huge Thunderbirds fan.
I did not know that.
He, along with many entrepreneurial types, such as Elon Musk, for example, are big Gerry Anderson fans. Anyway, Richard Branson was such a Thunderbirds fan that in 2002 they were going to commission a fleet of rescue locomotives. And he decided that they were going to be all named after Thunderbirds vehicles and characters. Or places, in fact.
Right.
So they were going to have 12 locomotives in this fleet, but ended up with 16. And every single one had a Thunderbirds-related name because he's such a fan.
Great.
Now, I knew about these already, but a few years ago, that fleet of locomotives was decommissioned. The nameplates were taken off, and all the names were auctioned to raise money for Alzheimer's Society, I think, from memory.
Right. Great.
And I went down to, was it St Pancras, I think, and did a little bit of posing on the platform with the plates and stuff.
Did. Yeah.
I'm all about the posing, aren't I, really? So
any opportunity.
Yeah, but for 10 years, those locomotives rolled around the tracks with names like Lady Penelope and Brains and Tracy Island, I think.
Wow, nice.
But each plate had the International Rescue logo on as well. So I think it was licensed by ITV. But for some time, if ever your train broke down, and we're not going to make any specific comments about specific companies here.
No.
If it did break down, then chances are you would be rescued by part of the International Rescue Fleet, which is kind of lovely,
great.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, that's great. Would you know, though, as a passenger, would they announce it? You'd hope so, wouldn't you? And Thunderbird 1 will be joining us in just a few moments to get the train on. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Your well-practiced train conductor voice there.
Of course, yes.
Rather lovely. Well, certainly you would have seen them going past on the tracks or whatever to rescue somebody else. So, dear Podsterons, did you ever see one of these Thunderbirds rescue locomotives out in the wild? Did you see one pulled up at a station? Did you see one on the tracks? In fact, did one rescue you as your train was stricken somewhere on the East Coast main line? Is that a thing that Virgin does or did?
I think they do or did, yes. I'm not sure they still do, actually, but yes.
Anyway, so we'll put some pictures, I think, if I can find them, of me on the platform with some of the signs, with some of the nameplates. And then we may even have some Podsterons who managed to pick up some of the nameplates in the charity auction. So let us know if you did. Send your pictures in and pop them along to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk or post them in the Podsterons Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. We would love to see them.
Yeah.
And also, have you seen any other Gerry Anderson themed named inanimate objects out in the wild?
Rather like the Eddie Stobart lorry we had a couple of weeks back.
Exactly.
Captain Scarlet. Yes,
exactly.
Yes, they're out there.
So, I mean, have you been to a shop or a hairdresser's called Moonbase Alpha or something like that. I don't know.
What?
Yeah, something random like that. Or do you have a friend who has a vehicle named after Marina or Oink from Stingray?
Yeah, okay, right. Yes.
Getting a bit vague.
Yes.
Or perhaps even the Hubble Space Telescope, which famously was named after Officer Hubble Orin in Space Precinct.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly why.
Or maybe it wasn't.
No.
Do let us know, drop us an email, and we'd love to see your Gerry Anderson spots out in the wild.
Great. Look forward to seeing those.
There you go. I think that's it, isn't it, for this one? Unless you've got anything else to add.
Nah, come on, let's move on.
All right, that's the end of this week's Train Fact. Great.
Very nice. Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing, I'm sure, because I bet there's a bit of a crossover between those who like to go train spotting and take pictures and all that sort of stuff and write down all the numbers in their books and Gerry Anderson fans. I bet there is. So I bet a fewer people out there will have photographs of those very trains.
There's almost certainly a crossover in the Venn diagram, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. Now, we have had some emails in. Do you want to hear them?
All right then.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll read them out now then. Rue Aiken, for example, got in touch at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk saying, "Hi guys, firstly, I just want to say that I'm loving the podcasts. I only discovered them a few days ago when I went online to LBC and searched podcasts. So I have a lot of catching up to do. You certainly do. I also wanted to say that I had the honour and privilege of working with the great Gerry Anderson on the pilot episode of Space Precinct, which at the time was called Space Police, of course. I'd been a fan, says Rue, of Mr. Anderson's work since Supercar, when I must have been about 6 or 7 years old, and then I loved everything that followed. I was a videotape editor during the 1980s and 90s, working on music videos, and one day, the company that I worked for got a phone call inviting me to Bray Studios to meet the production team of a new series that was being produced by Gerry Anderson. When I got there, I was waiting in a small office packed with iconic Anderson memorabilia, waiting to meet some of the team, when in walked Gerry Anderson. My mouth fell open and I just froze, unable to speak for a few seconds. Anyway, he says, to cut a long story short, Gerry and I did end up working together. My role was to add video effects to the edited Space Police film. Working with Gerry was, and still is, the absolute highlight of my 20-year career as an editor in television. I then also got to do some of the video work on Dick Spanner. The last time that I worked with Gerry was on a Thunderbirds music video. I can't remember what it was called, but I know it had a fantastic female vocalist on it. Now, because Gerry had previously sold the rights to his legacy shows, we had to use Space Police footage in the video. During my time at Carlton TV, I worked with many big names on many pop videos, especially during the 1980s, but nothing ever came close to when I worked with my idol, the legendary Gerry Anderson. Kindest regards, Rue Aiken. Isn't that lovely?
That's a great email, yes. Lovely, Rue. Thank you. I'm glad you found us and I'm glad you sent us that in. Isn't that great?
Yeah, really good to hear from you. Interesting. So what was this, the Thunderbirds music video, I wonder? Female vocalist.
Well, I'm thinking that would have been Moya Ruskin or Moya Griffiths as Kate Kestrel for the SOS music video.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think. Yeah. But the timing wouldn't quite work then, so I'm wondering if it's something else. I'm wondering if it might have even been providing some material for Fuzzbox for their International Rescue music video, possibly.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah, Rue, if that rings any bells, then do drop us a line and email us back in. Although, by the time you've listened all the way up to this one...
yes, we'll all be very old.
It may now be, yes. It's 2077. But no, drop us a line. We'd love to know if that, sparks any memories.
Now, we were talking previously about people knowing other people or having children or pets named after Gerry Anderson characters or actors. Hi both, says this email. I love the podcast. My name is Richard James Jeeves. Now, before you feel too good, I was born in 1983. So he wasn't actually named after me, I think is what he's saying.
Shame.
Sorry about that. He says, regards, Richard James Jeeves. Well, that's nice, isn't it? Very good. There are a few of us out there, actually, production designers and things. Like this, Star Trek, I think, has got one of the production designers is Richard James, I'm sure of it. Richard D. James, I think. Anyway, we also have Peter Lippman, of course, who we know very well, has emailed us to say, hi, Jamie and Richard. Whilst everything Gerry Anderson touched had unique magic sprinkled all over it that endures to this day and beyond, I guess the one and only series that I do have trouble watching is The Protectors. So this goes back to our conversation a couple of weeks ago about what is the Gerry Anderson series that you actually have trouble watching. Every time, says Peter, I try to give it a complete run, I'm afraid to say that only after a handful of episodes, it usually goes back on the shelf. Now, there are several reasons for this, he says. Firstly, being filmed, I believe, on 16mm, it looked rather grainy and not the usual superb ITC quality. Secondly, some of the plots were a little incomprehensible. And most importantly for me is that I read that Robert Vaughn was extremely rude to Gerry Anderson, which in my book, Man from U.N.C.L.E. or not, is totally unforgivable. Apologies to all Protectors fans out there, but for me, it's nowhere near what one could call a proper Gerry Anderson series. Keep safe, SIG from Peter Littman. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. In a way, it isn't a proper Gerry Anderson series, is it? That's the point, I suppose.
Exactly, because it was lacking the real creative input from the outset that you have got in any other Anderson series. It was presented as a kind of fait accompli, wasn't it? Just kind of, just here's the format, here's some of the scripts, go make it. Thanks, bye.
That's right. And also going back, we had, if you remember, Seb Bird's amazing impressions from Space Precinct that set us off down a certain road. Yeah. Well, Big Al got in touch to say he's now fixed his tech problems. So here's a soundbite for you, recorded in not-so-super microphonation, or something like that, sent from Big Al's recording studio. So let's have a listen to that.
Hello, podcast punters. It's Big Al here. Caught an earful of these. Stand by for action. On our way home. This is a red alert, not a stroll around the deck. Move! You must not touch my brain! Go on, you lovely Megazords! Give it to 'em, lads! We're not going to make it. We're running out of runway. Oh, welcome home. Was that it? Blimey.
Well done, Big Al.
Nice work, Big Al. Fantastic. Yes. Richard, are you a bit concerned about your position as voice artist extraordinaire there? Does that make you feel threatened at all? I think it probably should.
No.
Rude. It was good, Big Al, but not that good, says Richard James.
No, it was very good. No. Of course, yes. I mean, lots of people. We know, don't we, that the Gerry Anderson fan base is a very talented group of people and very creative. I'm sure if you got them all together, I reckon they could probably make a brand new Gerry Anderson series all by themselves. You could just let them get on with it. What's that phrase about the monkeys and the typewriters coming up with Shakespeare in an infinite amount of time? It's probably the same with our Podsterons, isn't
it? The infinite monkey cage.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. It's the infinite Podsteron cage.
That's right.
Yeah, but there you go. You've solved everything. We'll just set them off to work, and that's that.
Exactly. We should try something like maybe that set me thinking for an idea. I'll come back to that later. Now, we do have one final email. This is from, here we go, here's a name, Vahe, I think that might be, who says, the other day I came across your site, and as a child, I grew up in Iran, and two of my favourite TV shows were UFO and Space 1999. By the way, I saw them dubbed in Farsi. And so, to have come across a site that sells T-shirts, etc., what a find! I ordered 2 T-shirts and have them already. Super quality, thank you. I still have some of my die-cast toys from back then, and a Super 8 reel of a 15-minute clip of one of the UFO episodes with audio. Yeah, amazing. He says your site brought back so many memories, and I'm sure I'll be ordering more goodies. All the very best. Well, that's great. Very nice. Always lovely when people are still discovering this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Particularly internationally, I think. Because we know that Anderson stuff's well known in the UK, but every territory beyond that, there's a big drop in sort of recognition and how well known the shows are. So to get a surprise email from Iran. Awesome.
Yeah, lovely. Very good. So more emails next week. Do send them into podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk and we'll do our best to read them out. And a little later on, we'll be reading out some tweets and popping over to our Facebook group as well.
But before all that, Richard James, I think it's very important that we inform our Podsterons of all the latest happenings from around the worlds of Gerry Anderson with the Gerry Anderson News.
You might be right.
Go on, Richard James.
Oh, news.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
And there's a fair old bit this week.
Oh, good.
Let's start off with Anderson Insiders. Now, we set up Anderson Insiders during the peak of lockdown. It's a special way for you to gain additional access to other stuff beyond all the lovely free stuff that we put out in the world, including this podcast and the YouTube channel and the website and all our social media, etc., etc. It's grown rather nicely. We've got a lovely load of insiders in there who are enjoying all sorts of behind-the-scenes content, etc., etc.
Great.
But we've had some requests from people to, first of all, give a sort of a lower entry-level tier, they're called. I was trying to think of the word tier. Only 4 letters, but very difficult, that one.
Yes.
So they wanted
multiple spellings.
Well,
what are you going for?
T-I-E-R.
Yeah,
that's the one. So we were asked for an additional sort of entry-level tier. So that has now been introduced. So you can now join Anderson Insiders as a cadet for £1 per month.
Oh, great. Good.
So very low cost there, low barrier to entry, and you can just come along and get some archive images every week, I think. Access to ask people like you, me, Chris Dale, and others any question you want.
Any question you want?
Well, within reason, obviously, we can select against, rude, invasive questions. They should be work-related, ideally, or possibly, a bit more personal, if you're happy to answer those questions.
Okay.
We can talk about that afterwards, Richard James. But if you would like to upgrade to additional levels, you can go up through the ranks to recruit or lieutenant or even special agent. And special agents are now getting, every single month, a piece of merch included in their monthly subscription.
Ah, great. Lovely.
Yes, so
very nice.
Special agent this month, your special T-shirt will be on its way in the next week or so, and you will get that before it's released on the Gerry Anderson store. So
great.
Included merch, exclusive previews, and more. So do pop along to patreon.com/Anderson Insiders and see if you'd like to give it a go. I can highly recommend it. It's getting busier and busier there all the time, and
good.
Yeah, lots to enjoy. If you are someone who has some wall space, Richard,
I do have a bit actually.
Then this might be the thing for you. Also, if you're on the Venn diagram, seeing as we started talking about Venn diagrams, the Venn diagram of people with wall space and people who like UFO. If you have a crossover there, then
that's me.
This is time for you. The UFO 50th anniversary official poster by Eric Chu is out now. It's available. It's shipping. A couple of hundred of you have already grabbed yours, and there's only 500 available worldwide, so go and grab that. It's rather lovely. Also, Tim from the shop informs me that there's a whole new range of Captain Scarlet badges and prints which have just arrived and will be on sale any minute now. If you had previously collected the Thunderbirds badges by Flory, the designer, then these are by the same designer, same style, and they're rather lovely, so you might want to go and grab those.
Nice.
Now, for the last couple of weeks, I've been warning repeatedly that the Thunderbirds vinyl soundtrack is selling out fast. Well, it's gone. That's it.
Yeah,
it's
really?
all sold out. I hate to say "told you so," but
go on.
No, I'm not going to say it, but I did.
Okay.
But I did.
Yeah, you did.
There is a small possibility that there's about 10 left with our distributor. We're trying to get hold of those, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So I'm really sorry if you missed out. The CD soundtrack is still available. But for now, no more Thunderbirds vinyl. To make up for that disappointment, though, you may want to pop along to our YouTube channel for some free content. Chris Dale's done a rather lovely video about the aliens from UFO called The Alien Files.
I like it.
Yeah. And there's also some more free episodes of Terrorhawks coming up in full glorious HD, totally free of charge, at youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV.
Great.
The final bit of news for this week's Gerry Anderson news comes from Richard Neinstein James.
Oh.
Because next week, Richard, we've got a bit of a treat. Rather than our usual interview, we have a different special feature. Would you like to tell listeners what that special feature is?
Well, they asked for it, didn't they, Jamie? So they're blooming well going to get it.
You've asked for it, you lot. This will teach you. Go on. What are you doing? What do they deserve?
Well, I'm very happy to say that Space Precinct Unmasked, my memoir, if you will, of my time filming on Gerry Anderson's last live-action series at Pinewood Studios in the mid-1990s, is getting an audio book release.
Hooray!
So I've been locking myself away over the last few days to record it all down for you, and that will be released at some point in the very near future, I would say. Haven't got a date yet, but we're getting very close. And so to mark that, nay, celebrate it, next week I'll be letting you in on a few secrets as we hear a couple of chapters from Space Precinct Unmasked.
Cool.
Eh? I mean, you won't get that anywhere else.
Well, can I say, you sent me a preview chapter while you've been recording this of the chapter about the snake.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to suck up to you, as just by chance that also happens, but I really enjoyed it. And I got to the end of the chapter and was like, I want to hear more. And I know I will. But it's great.
The thing is, I think it gets all the more interesting when Lou Hirsch comes along. That's what really spices it up.
Yes, there's a certain je ne sais quoi that comes with Lou Hirsch's memories, different sort of tone to the other recollections of your fellow cast and crew members.
Yeah, so we do have recollections from other cast members as well in there, but I have to say, I don't do any impressions on this one, so you won't be hearing my Lou Hirsch.
Gutted.
Or my Jerome Willis, but we've certainly got lots of recollections from people like, Phil Morrow, who was the script editor, I think.
Can you do an impression of Phil Morrow?
No, I can't, funnily enough. And from Rob Thurtle, who was sort of one of our Alien of the Week actors, and from, Lou Hirsch himself. And David Quinter. Charlotte Serple, yeah. So there's a half a dozen other voices in there who all sound remarkably like me.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, it's a really great listen, and you can look forward to a couple of free chapters next week, folks. And also, if you are an Anderson insider, you'll get access to some chapters even before then. And if you're a special agent, I suspect the full version of Space Precinct Unmasked as an audiobook will be one of your included bits of merch in the next couple of months. So you can look forward to that as well.
Yeah, great.
Right, that was a load of news. I think we should stop doing some news now and do something else that's not news. So,
yeah, go on.
Is that the end of the news?
That was the news. What a load of news.
What a load of new news.
Hey, wasn't it? Wasn't it, though?
Fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it, that even in the middle of a global pandemic, stuff's still going on, isn't it? Still getting made.
Yes.
Still being putting up.
It's unbelievable. Well, also, there was that thing which we've already alluded to last week, which we did last week.
Oh, yes.
Which was great fun. And
Can I give a little...
Not yet. Hang on.
Can I mention a few co-stars or... No,
you can't. I'm so sorry. I've just got to let the dog out.
Really?
I'll be back in a second.
Well, while you're gone, I'll tell the... Right.
Come on.
As he's gone to let the dog out, I'll just let you know what we were up to last week. You're not going to believe this, but last Tuesday, I was sat right here recording a very special... Oh,
what are you doing?
What? I was just clearing my throat. Just clearing my throat.
What, by saying recording? That's the bit I heard.
It was a bit of a vocal warm-up. Recording. It's very good for the old diction.
Oh, like 1, 2 and...
Anyway, so I don't know if you've seen on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, but we have had a fair few responses to my question a couple of weeks ago about what is, in your view, the worst Gerry Anderson series. What, out of all of them, can you possibly not watch? And
Can of Worms comes to mind there, which I saw how many comments there were.
We had, at last count, 166 comments. Which I think is probably the most commented on post on our group.
I think it is.
But listen, it was all very good-natured and good-humoured, and people were very respectful of other people's opinions, because that's what it's all about. And I genuinely wanted to know, there must be something, surely, out of the whole 60 years or so, there's got to be something that doesn't quite float your boat.
Joe 90.
So yes, but exactly, there we go. So Neil posted, it was Space Precinct for me. I couldn't get into it when it was originally shown, and I bought the series on DVD, but still not my cup of tea. Sorry, Richard. AC says I struggle with Fireball XL5's blatant disregard for plausibility. Lauren says, I think for me it's Terrorhawks. I don't understand it, and the skin on the puppets creeps me out.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Rob says it has to be Torchy the Battery Boy. The big eyes and torch on his head was pretty scary stuff, and I found it very weird. Gary says, not keen on Joe 90. Joe just didn't appeal. James said, I think I have very little love for the Protectors. Steve says, I find the Secret Service a hard watch. And Dave said, let's just flick over the page there. Yeah. Dave said, the only programme that really makes me cringe is Carry On UFO. This is David Sissons, in fact, where women have important jobs as long as they can make the men a decent cup of tea. Simpsons Clips 24 says, for me it's got to be Space 1999, it's too slow. Danny Baxter says, New Captain Scarlet. Robert says, Gerry Anderson shows are like classic Doctors. You may have your least favourites, but there are no actually bad ones. And on a similar theme, just to end with, James said, I've struggled to enjoy Space 1999, Terrorhawks and Space Precinct over the years. I appreciate the work and creativity that went into making them, but they never gripped my imagination as the classic Super Marination series did. I find the production history of them more interesting than the series themselves, though. So there's an alternative way of liking them, I guess. And that's absolutely right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So even if it's not your cup of tea, I think we could all appreciate every one of those series has a particular role to play in the greater Gerry Anderson story. And that's what's so nice, isn't it?
It is lovely, yeah. And sort of what we do with the mix here, where we'll have a FAB Fact, which is, not from the fictional side, but maybe, from the making of, or even something more widely connected.
Yeah.
Did anybody say Thunderbirds out of interest?
I struggled to find someone who said Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think there may have been one towards the end that I didn't quite have time to make a note of. But certainly Thunderbirds got off lightly. Captain Scarlet got off lightly as well. But yeah, pretty much everyone else was in the firing line. It was a pretty even spread, actually, which was interesting to see.
Nice. But I must say, again, Podsterons, we love you for this. The fact that you can ask a question like that and then have 166 comments worth of discourse about it without even vaguely approaching anybody being compared to Hitler, which tends to happen online.
Yeah, that's right.
Is a testament to the good nature and positivity within that group. So thank you all. We love you for keeping it that way.
Yeah, that's right.
Great work.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we came to a kind of consensus of opinion that a lot of what you like and what you don't like is sort of seen through the lens of how old you were when you first saw it and where you were when you experienced the shows and all that sort of thing, So it's quite a complex question, actually.
It is, and there's no right answer.
No, of course there isn't. There we are. Yeah.
Well, except for Joe 90, obviously. Now, I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background. I apologise if that's the case, but it's the large one that I had to let out for a wee because, to be honest, he's so big, if he did a wee in the house, I might drown.
Whoa, okay, lovely.
So, while I go and sort out this barking dog, do you think we should hand over to Brian Cox and Robin Ince for the last part of their interview?
Oh, yes, let's do that.
Okay, I think there might be a couple of rude words, so we'll have to bleep those out from Brian Cox, who got a bit passionate at the end about something Space 1999 connected. But here they are, the two from the Infinite Monkey Cage, and me, the Infinite Monkey, here they are. From a scientist's perspective, can you tell me, for you, from now or from when you were a kid, the most exciting element of, let's say, Space 1999, and the most scientifically frustrating in terms of its accuracy or meaninglessness?
Well, the best bit, I think, of it, other than everything I've said that I think is wonderful, just the effects are superb, right? So I think it is a plausible-looking moon base. The Eagle is the best spacecraft ever designed, undoubtedly, aesthetically. Nobody argues with that who's got any brain. So I think that the backdrop, the world, was convincing, I thought. And I suppose that, I suppose it did come out of the 2001 when you see that you can do it and try to be accurate in the world. And so, of course, some of the plot lines are unusual and philosophical in part, but that's not the reason that I watch science fiction, as we talked about before. I watch science fiction to explore ideas. So, you can criticize. Of course, you could criticize the central premise if you really wanted. You go, why did they not just fire the nuclear waste into space? Why bury it on the moon? Once you've launched it from Earth, the worst possible thing to do is land it again and bury it near your moon base. It's ridiculous. So you can, if you'd just not landed it on the moon but fired it off into space, all would have been well. So there are central issues with the premise.
Well, also, at what speed is the moon travelling? If you want to get into those things, the speed that the moon must be required to travel to manage to meet this number of civilizations, you're talking about possibly it therefore being integrated. So I totally agree. If you get caught up in that, then you go, well, it's like the, what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. I interviewed him a while ago. The guy who wrote, Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. He wrote The Martian to be as exact as possible. But there's one thing that's not true, which is the situation that arises that means he's trapped on Mars. So if you want, you can then leave it entirely. Oh, actually, there wouldn't have been a storm like that, so I don't care about him growing potatoes. That's it.
Yeah.
So I think it's annoying if you go, they've created a world and they keep breaking the rules of the world. I think in science fiction, as long as you go, right, we accept that these things are never going to happen, but, Star Trek in the end would be a 5-year mission. What happened on it? Nothing. We got to Saturn and then we turned back. That's it? Yeah. How are we going to make 72 episodes of that? I don't know. There'll be a lot of squabbling in the kitchen. There's a time where Dr. McCoy ends up using the cocoa powder that's actually owned by Chekhov and the whole. That's it? Yeah, because they don't meet anyone and nothing.
Well, of course. Yeah, so I think every single science fiction film which involves travel beyond the solar system falls down on relativity. You can't get around the fact that if you're going to travel around close to the speed of light, by the time you get back, everybody will be dead. You can't get around that. So there's only Interstellar that tries to do that and does it correctly, as it happens. And Robin will be the first to acknowledge that my involvement in science fiction was primarily on the film Sunshine. Now, Sunshine, I think, is a great, if slightly flawed film, but I think it's a great science fiction film. But the premise which is dealt with initially in about 3 lines of dialogue by Cillian Murphy's character right at the start, which is our sun is dying, mankind faces extinction, and then we're going to go and fix it, basically. The premise is ludicrous. It's more ludicrous than blowing the moon out of Earth orbit with a nuclear waste dump. Right? It's actually more idiotic as a scientific principle than that. But as Robin says, that's absolute nonsense. That's not what the films and the series are about.
As long as they're exploring interesting ideas, because even Interstellar has, I can't remember which scene it is, I remember Kip Thorne talking about this, where he said that there's one thing which is scientifically really, no. That as far as we know, this is... And the reason was that Christopher Nolan was scientifically accurate until he went, do you know what? This is such a good plot point that I'm afraid science goes to the side. And I think that's, there's those points. But predominantly it is a cohesive world. In fact, I was just thinking about your dad's movie. As far as I know, did he make any Journey to the Far Side of the Sun?
Yeah, or Doppelganger, yeah.
Yeah, it used to get shown on Sunday afternoons a great deal, again, in the LWT area. I haven't seen that for
years. And I haven't seen that, but I remember that.
It's the revelation, the looking in the mirror, and the realisation that I think the aftershave bottle or in the mirror is the right way round. Yeah. And then that fits in very nicely with, again, all of those kind of Charlton Heston dystopian movies as well, and these confusions of travel. That one, I think, it's a long time since I've seen that. Is it Roy Thins or Roy Thines? I never quite know how to pronounce his name from The Invaders. I think he's the star, isn't he?
Finesse?
Finesse.
Never we'll go that. Yeah.
As well, working on Sunshine, which you see in everything, talking about accuracy. So in Sunshine, initially, the film was cut with the spacecraft not making any noise, because spaceships always make noise, right? Except in 2001, where you play Blue Danube over them. Right? That's the way to get around it. But a noiseless spacecraft doesn't work for the audience. Mm. And also, of course, astronauts move at normal speed. When they're in space, they don't slow down. They don't go into slow motion in 0G. But when Danny Boyle told me that when he filmed the tests and he thought we're going to do this accurately, it looked wrong, because of the way the audience has been conditioned. So audiences are conditioned to think that astronauts in 0G move slowly. Whereas, of course, you do things at normal speed. So it's an interesting thing, isn't it? You've got to make it look and feel right for an audience, I think, rather than be absolutely brutally scientific. Again, maybe 2001, you have absolute accuracy as a
I noticed on Ad Astra that the Brad Pitt thing recently, they played a lot more with muting the sound right down for anything that was space wasn't. It is a strange experience as someone in the audience watching it.
Yeah.
Even if you know it and appreciate it, because without sound there's less perceived movement.
Yeah, big spaceships make big noises, right? They just do, don't they?
Exactly. Last thing from me, pretty much, gents, before I let you go. Do you think the world needs a new Space 1999, a Space 2099? Everything is being revisited, Lost in Space, as you've said. Things are being made to appeal again to their nostalgic audiences, being made older and darker. There's always people talking about making more of this 1970s sci-fi show. And you said yourself, Brian, there's lots of really important questions and philosophical stuff that comes up from that. Maybe a time when we're all a bit selfish and focused on our own lives rather than some more important, bigger stuff. Is it in the realms of possibility that a remake of Space 1999 can help us in any way?
I think it should be remade and be set in 1999 and do everything that happened in space in 1999 as a compare and contrast. But I would say the first lesson of all science fiction, which still hasn't been learnt, is always call it the future or 20 years in the future, because you watch Escape from New York and you see that's in 1997. Even Escape from LA, I think, is in the past now. Right. But I think all of these ideas are worth, it's a good idea and it's worth revisiting, it's worth reinventing. And these, as Brian was saying, these are good times for very high quality science fiction, which again has returned to having ideas. It's not just cowboys in space.
Yeah.
That said, I would like to ask, have either of you seen Moon 02? It's one of the only...
Been recommended recently.
I've never seen it. It's a Hammer movie, and I've seen nearly all the Hammer films. And I think it was made just after 2001 to kind of... And that is a kind of, a bit like Outland, which is High Noon in Space with Sean Connery. It's a kind of cowboy movie in space with Warren Mitchell. but I've never seen it. I just wonder because I
was going to say to the question, yes, if the closest thing in atmosphere to it, I think now is Tales from the Loop, right, which is brilliant, and that's been criticised, I think, for being too cerebral by some people. You watch Space 1999, I think it was criticised at the time for being too cerebral. So I would certainly not like to see a remake of it that lost that thoughtful, philosophical, dark pace and the dark feel. There's an undercurrent of darkness, I think, in Space 1999, which is what makes it. So I think if someone wanted to remake it along the lines of a Tales from the Loop rather than whatever, Star Trek Discovery, I suppose. Although, as we said, I like Discovery, but then I'd strongly support it. But I mean, people have made it'll be interesting to see what happens with Foundation, I think. If Foundation, if that does justice to the books, then I think I could see Space 1999 being... You need great writing, though.
Yeah.
You need not to mess with the spaceships. The Thunderbirds film, I like Jonathan Frakes, right? I think he's great. He's a good director. But why the Thunderbirds film, I just thought, Thunderbird 2 looks shit. You can't make Thunderbird 2 look shit. And the new toy is even shitter than the thing. It's just horrendous. So if anyone changes 1 millimetre of an eagle, I will not watch it.
You'll be hearing from Brian's lawyers.
Or the costumes, actually. I think also the costumes should be the same. So I've got many demands. In fact,
what Brian's actually saying is, if you'd like to cast him, you don't have to pay any money because he's already got the costume. So you've got a budget saving.
I will,
so he's very
keen. You need
keen.
someone to stand there and shout at every television executive, if it's ever remade, and say, just shut up and go away. Do not offer any opinion at all on anything to do with this show. Then I'll be the person who comes and just does that. You can employ me to do that, to keep them away from the artists.
There you go.
So it can be remade in the spirit of the original.
Thank you, Brian. That's the verbal contract there you've entered into. Thanks for doing that. Gents, thank you so much for taking time to do this. Obviously, our listeners should go and listen to The Monkey Cage, which they can find on BBC Sounds and any podcast player.
Yeah, we've got the new series. We've got, amongst others, we've got Steve Martin on. There's the Radio Times. When you just go, I feel you could have done more there. The listings for that just goes, and in this week's Infinite Monkey Cage, Brian and Robin are joined by comedians Eric Idle and Steve Martin. And you go, do you know what? I think they've got a body of work, which means they're not just a couple of guys who've appeared on Mock the Week a couple of times. Just comedians. Who's that? The comedian Steve Martin. He used to do Weekending, I think, in the news headlines. Yeah. Something like that. But yeah, we got Steve Martin. We've got Jane Goodall as well, which was we had a really great. It was a lot of fun.
Rusty Schweiger from Apollo 9, Chris Hadfield, Helen Sharman, Nicole Stott, who flew on 2 spacecraft, 2 space shuttles. Yeah.
See, Rusty, I would love to know because Rusty's so interesting. He was Apollo 9 testing out the lunar module and stuff, and he has this very strong, passionate belief that what is going on is that the Earth is our mother, and all children get to a point where they must leave their mother, and so he sees the beginning of Apollo as being the start of our departure from mother. It's our kind of late teenage years. Space 1999. And his sense of that, the need to journey out. Yeah.
I've got a question for Robin before we go. Who would play Victor in the new Space 1999? It's a big role.
That's very good, isn't it? Who would be... It's a great role, isn't it? It is, and again, as you said, you want that... I mean, you do want the kind of equivalent of someone like Peter Capaldi. Obviously he can't do it because of Doctor Who, but you want somebody who brings... that what you would call the Barrymore, or even more so that Tom Baker eccentricity. So yeah, someone in the Capaldi line, I think, is what would be required.
Yeah. And Commander Koenig.
Well, it's a very Clooney role, isn't it? Really? It's got to be said, it's a very Clooney. I don't think it's a very Clooney role. I think he needs to be a bit more charming this time, and I think he needs to look like he's happier to be lost in space. I still love, I have to admit, whenever I turn Space 1999, what I love is the entire, and this was true of most 70s television, the utter lack of subtlety when a gauze is used to make a Hollywood actor with a contract look younger. The sudden moment in which you go, is my television got misted up or so? Oh no, I know what's happened. This is the contractual gauze that happens for Barry Morse never had the contractual gauze as far as I remember.
Didn't need it. Always looked great. Lovely. Well, I'm sure our listeners will have some ideas of who to cast, but gents, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And all of our listeners, go and listen to Monkey Cage, because if you enjoy any part of this, you will absolutely love what they do over there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what a lovely couple of guests they were.
Yes, the finite Monkey Cage, it appears.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, didn't hold back, did he, Brian Cox?
No. Very passionate about any sort of Space 1999 remake there.
Yeah,
so
great.
if it does ever happen, and some TV exec tries to change the design of the Eagles, then Brian will be there,
yes,
ready and waiting, with swear words and possibly a weapon in hand, which is nice to know. No, they were great. So yes, Robin and Brian, if you do hear this, thank you very much. But I suspect they'll be too busy recording the Infinite Monkey Cage or some TV show or doing something else productive instead.
Of course they will be. Yeah, that's right.
Next week, Richard, as we've mentioned in the news, there is no interview, but instead there is ...
Yeah. A couple of chapters from Space Precinct Unmasked by Richard James, who I don't know if you know was in Space Precinct.
What?
Yeah, he doesn't like to talk about it. I don't know why I'm talking about him in the third person now. But anyway,
him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Strange.
Him. Yeah.
Do you know what? When I was doing behind the scenes interviews for the thing that we did.
Oh, yeah.
And
I haven't mentioned that.
No, I know you haven't, of course. No. But the fact that you never mentioned the fact that you're in Space Precinct came up in that interview, funnily enough.
Oh, did it? Oh.
Yeah. So it's well known that you never mentioned that you're in it, which is quite something to be known for.
Yeah, isn't it? I
anyway,
suppose.
yes, so you've got that to look forward to next week, Podsterons. And then beyond that, well, more interviews, all sorts of goodies, and probably some previews in due course of the secret thing that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, good. Great. How exciting.
Yeah, exciting.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, okay. Right, what else have you got for us, Dickie James?
Well, just before we head on over to Twitter, this is just my usual reminder that, of course, you can subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Do it now, because we know that we have thousands of listeners, and we know that not all of you have subscribed. Why wouldn't you? Because if you do subscribe, it means that you get a notification every time a new episode appears, and you'll be amongst the first to hear it. And while you're there, you can leave us a rating, of course, which is a nice review and a rating, and share us with your friends so they can hear us too. So over on Twitter, people have been hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast, tagging him, I'm Jamie Anderson, me, Richard and James, and him just over there by the fireplace, Chris Dalek. You see him? Yeah. For example, Warrior Girl 279 says, "Thank you, Gerry Anderson Podcast, for reading out my tweets. It was unexpected and a nice surprise on a wet Monday morning. For pod 120, she says, how about a Podsteron special where both of you interview members of the fantastic community? Well, we've been there and done that, haven't we, really?
Oh, I suppose
at
we
our
did
live
for pod
event
50?
in Leicester. That's right. So do listen back to that, and you'll hear a good few of your Podsterons community in there. Gary says, great pod, enjoyed the interview, looking forward to the next parts, and a goodly randomiser, too, makes a Monday morning special. Cheers, Fab Trio. Lost in Transition says, podcast listen complete. Wonderful interview with the Prof and Robin. Regarding the comments about Joe 90 episode, I don't know anything significant, but over the past few years, now this is going back to, do you remember someone messaged us and mentioned the scene in the first episode of Joe 90 that's all done with stills.
Oh, the stills, yeah.
Sort of cut together, yeah. And Lost in Transition says, over the past few years, I've actually thought that it was a really impressive use of still images and audio. I couldn't remember who directed the episode, so I looked it up, and it was a guy called Chris Marker. But the still shots might have been influenced by a film called Le Jeté, which was constructed almost entirely from still photos. And it tells the story of a post-nuclear war experiment in time travel, and it's very arty. Well, that, in turn, also inspired 12 Monkeys by Terry Gilliam. That very film. So, who knows? Who knows the origin of that particular sequence in Joe 90? And finally, with reference to the last podcast featuring part 2 of our interview with Brian Cox and Robin Ince, Natalia tweeted, "Take me to space with you, Brian." That's it. I'm sure he'll be in touch.
Yes, or his people will be, one of the two.
Exactly. So yeah, do get in touch and hashtag us, Gerry Anderson Podcast, and I'll read out your tweets next week.
Or hagtash us. I think I quite like the sound of that. Delicious.
Yeah, lovely.
Right. Now, Chris has been waiting patiently there by the fireplace for some time.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah, he has.
Looking very smart, leaning up on the mantelpiece there with his dinner jacket on and
cravat. Looks lovely.
Yeah. And what is that? Is that orange or red? It's sort of the Thunderbird 3 colour, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
that's right. Yeah.
Chris, looking very smart. You've been waiting patiently, and so have our Podsterons. So I think it's probably time that we allow you to begin the randomizer now.
Surface temperature now 40 degrees centigrade and rising rapidly.
Well, that's uncanny.
And still rising.
Oh, yes, I would pick the hottest day on record to come back to Moonbase Alpha. Tony, I was going to ask one of your command centre staff to provide the randomizer printout today.
I don't need a computer printout to tell me that it's hot and it's getting hotter.
I know, I agree. I would rather not have to stick around in this heat any longer than necessary, so I've already made today's selection. It's UFO and it's ESP.
What does that mean? Extrasensory perception.
Yes, thank you for explaining that. Sam, I'm sure everybody remembers who you are.
Ready to receive data.
So welcome back to UFO with ESP, and I'm starting to worry a bit with UFO. We seem to be getting through these rather quicker than the rest of the Anderson shows. And I'm hoping that we're not going to suddenly run out or have like a year's gap or something. But
Bridget accounts for tomorrow.
There we go. That's the perils of the randomizer. Gotta go with what comes up, good or bad, frequent or infrequent. And we're starting off with this. Well, straight away we have one of the, I think, the high spots of this episode, and possibly one of the strongest guest performances of the entire series. This is John Stratton as
Do you want to please to see me?
Mr. John Croxley.
Would have been better as a surprise.
As a man who, for whom nothing can be a surprise, for he has ESP.
The doctor.
I told you this morning.
Well, you can drop me off on the way. I'll take a taxi home.
And I like how this scene...
Been to see...
She'll be better tomorrow.
This scene plays out, and at first it just looks like a normal, husband meeting his wife, and then it sort of gradually... You get the reveal of the ESP, and then it...
Tell me how.
This sort of manic, desperate side of Stratton's performance takes over.
What do you expect? It isn't exactly normal, is it?
The doctor said it would pass.
So we've gone from one location that I feel I should recognise, the place where Croxley works, to another location I feel I should recognise in this...
Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you.
This building where Croxley's going to see his doctor.
Sorry.
Shut up, can't you? Stop it! That stupid remark you're always using.
What can I say? As soon as I tell you about anything.
And I like as well the obvious strain that Croxley's ability is placing on both of them in this relationship.
You just don't think.
How it's literally impossible for either of them to function as long as this is this is ruling their lives.
I don't know how long I can stand it.
And of course, John Stratton is probably known to Doctor Who fans as Shockeye in The Two Doctors. Also turned up in a lot of other things along the way, but he's off to see... Well, we're getting a pan over to the sign saying Dr. Brunner. Although I believe that later on, isn't there a goof with that? We'll find out along the way. Anyway, Croxley's having some tests done. Lots of electrodes being strapped to his temples and to his chin, oddly. And there's the Doctor, played by...
Is it Mr. Croxley?
Douglas Wilmer, who is one of the few actors to have appeared in UFO and The Protectors and Space 1999, all three live-action Gerry Anderson ITC shows, which is it's quite a small club that he's a part of there.
Sometimes I wonder if you really want to be helped. Most of the time, your answers to my questions are complete and direct, but somewhere there is a mental block, a refusal to...
This is lovely as well.
It's certain...
Hearing this building sound effect that...
I have to go.
That almost sounds like an approaching UFO.
Oh, no, I can't make Thursday.
What did you say?
I thought you said Thursday.
No, Mr. Croxley. I was about to. But you have anticipated my words.
And Douglas Wilmer is another very good actor. I think what's working well in this scene is
That seems to be a great pity.
He's underplaying it, and Stratton isn't overplaying it, but there's
some progress.
There's a manic energy to his performance because he's a man driven to despair by.
If you should change your mind,
by always knowing
don't hesitate to call.
The next thing that's going to come out of the mouth of the person he's talking to.
Are you all right?
Yes. It's my wife. She's going to have a visitor.
Sighting confirmed. Course varying 8 to 10 degrees.
Hello, Gay. How long has it been banking and weaving like this?
Well, that's a very personal question, Alec.
Seconds ago, sir. Before that, course and speed.
It's nothing naughty. They've picked up a UFO.
Readings.
Course.
Of course.
How long before Commander Straker comes on duty? What's the panic?
Don't do that.
A UFO.
UFO? Well, Alec, you should contact the people who deal with such things. Why are you so worried about a UFO?
Yes, but maintaining an overall flight path.
Yeah, the UFO's going all wibbly-wobbly.
Yes, I agree with you, Alec. This zigzagging is unusual.
It's almost as if it were trying to avoid something.
Or find something. Sound a red alert.
Shadow control to all stations. We have a red alert. Repeat, condition is red.
And I do love the how funky this I don't know what you call this part of the show where the title and the cast names and the writer and so on come up, but yeah, it's a nice, very funky way to go to Moonbase to see the interceptors taking off. But then I'm a sucker for any time in this show where this kind of music is playing and there's stock footage of things taking off and driving around or whatever, even as something as simple as an interceptor launch. It's just so much cooler with this amazing music.
Interceptors, immediate launch.
And
immediate launch.
Oh, it's good old Mark Bradley is back.
Oh, hi, Mark. Missile launch. 10 seconds.
I do remember that the actor Harry Baird, he left the series for a little while because he wasn't happy with the way in which there was no consistency from one week to another with regard to what actor would be working. But then he did return for this episode and
Moonbase to Shadow
and kill Straker.
Hit it, Commander.
But he's not really playing.
Well done, Lieutenant.
Mark Bradley as such, because nobody ever really treats him like that formerly vital and prominent character in the show. It's just like now he's generic interceptor pilot. Anyway.
Moonbase to Shadow Control.
Straker and Freeman are celebrating. It's cigar time. They've blown up the UFO.
Contact, sir.
But.
And UFO?
No, sir. The same one.
Oh, no.
But you reported a positive detonation.
I know, sir.
It's Mark's fault. I told you not to bring him back.
Well, what's the position now, Lieutenant?
Screw it, sir.
I'm sorry, sir. It's through Moonbase defenses, heading for Earth.
Oh, that's it. Freeman puts the cigar back in the tub. That's one less today. It'll have to be only 25 today.
Seemed to me that UFO was a sitting target.
Maybe that's what we were supposed to think.
And it's a good point, Alec. Force the interceptors to release their missiles, avoid them, then it gets a clear run past the Moonbase defenses. Where is it now?
Yeah, because a UFO has never avoided the interceptor missiles on this show before.
I say it's changing course more violently than before.
Yeah, still wibbly and wobbly.
So we can get it to Western Europe.
Well, it could be damaged.
Western Europe. Well, shall we place bets on where in Western Europe this is going to land? I predict...
Speed increasing.
I predict about 10 minutes drive from the studio, probably.
Looks like it's going to hit. The question is, what is it up to?
Tell you what I think, Alec. I think that UFO is under manual control. First, the
aren't they all?
Programs.
Where'd that come from? I don't remember ever hearing or seeing any indication that the UFOs were under computer control. I always assumed someone would be piloting them.
Areas 17 to 23.
Too close for comfort. Sound a red alert.
Oh, that's it. Yep, UFO bingo. They're going to land very close.
Alert the mobiles.
Again, more funky music to vehicle footage. Yes, this is the old Markers Universal Shadow Mobile Transporter truck as the UFO gets nearer. And And I like the idea of the Markers Universal truck, but it doesn't look big enough to hold enough mobiles. I mean, you see Shadow 2 rolling out here. There's barely any room at the sides.
What's your instructions?
This is Red Alert. Proceed to map reference 405.
Anyway, Paul Foster is on the scene.
Roger, Control. Mobile 2, move.
I'm not sure why he wasn't at Shadow Control, why he just happened to be in a mobile inside a truck ready for action. Where was he? Where was he anyway?
Shadow Control to Mobile 2.
This is Commander Straker. Get that area sealed off, Foster.
Yes, sir.
I want a detailed survey of the area. If there is a specific target in there, I want to know about it.
I do like as well how methodical Shadow can be in these early episodes. I think later on, although the pacing of the show sped up when they moved to Pinewood, they sacrificed just a little bit of the credibility in terms of how thorough Shadow can be. Earlier on in the series, it was kind of the other way. You would have actors running off whole lists of numbers and words, and none of it really meant anything. Here, I think, but by this point in the series, they've achieved a nice balance. Anyway, Croxley's wife is at home, as is the Croxley cat.
Well, John.
But John's not there yet.
Has your visitor arrived yet?
Visitor?
I wonder if Croxley gets any ESP-related vibes from the cat as well. That seems like the sort of thing that if a cat was aware that you could sense what it was going to do next, and that was driving you crazy, it seems like the sort of thing that a cat might want to exploit.
Derelict farm and a couple of houses within a 5-mile radius of the ETT.
Slide rules. Oh, I love this for Shadow. All slide rules and locating bearings and so on.
It's wooded, common land. What could be of interest there?
It's out of control. The aliens being forced to crash land.
No, somehow I don't think so.
This is a very nice model of the Croxley house as well, and sometimes with this show particularly, the live action stuff and the
UFO speed.
The models don't always click as well as you'd hope. They're still gorgeous to look at, but if you cut from a live action shot to a brightly lit model of a building in daytime, that clearly these are
time to complete evacuation
are taking place possibly months apart. But here, this shot of the house at night looks almost real.
Range 600 miles.
The roadblock should be in position now. The whole area is sealed off.
Did Croxley pick like the furthest doctor away from his house? Considering he was already on the way home before Shadow even arrived, it's taken him a very long time to get there.
Course maintained, speed reducing.
Oh, here we go. This is way back in pod whatever it was. We had a randomizer for Mindbender, and I mentioned one of the Shadow security guards in that who gets killed.
This area's been sealed off.
Was in an earlier episode, and that's him there, Stanley McGeeg.
Yes, sir.
Or McGee, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name.
I live a couple of miles over there.
He gets killed in that episode, and he's found dying on the floor by another Shadow security guard played by John Lyons, and they're both in this scene together as undercover Shadow operatives. And considering that this... Yeah, there they are together. Considering that this is a Bournemouth episode, and they were later together again in a Pinewood episode, it's
speed increasing.
It's very odd that they were.
Check it.
They both played security guards together.
Colonel Foster.
In episodes so far apart, but it's a nice touch for the people who've seen these episodes over and over again, like me. And I do like occasionally that happened in UFO.
Colonel Foster, have you got visual contact?
No, sir. Still tracking on audio.
So Croxley's at the roadblock. He's losing it a bit. The UFO's coming in very fast towards the Croxley house, and this is a horrifying build-up for to the end of Mrs. Croxley here. Hearing that sound, she's got no idea what's about to happen. Fortunately, the cat seems to have a slight premonition of what's to come, because the cat's gonna charge out of there. Super fast speed, and the UFO smashes into the Croxley house, and that is a gorgeous bit of model work.
Well, it seems it was some sort of experimental aircraft.
Meanwhile, Croxley at the roadblock. Oh, good old McGeegan Lions there, looking after him as he's fainted. And Paul Foster's moving in the mobile. It's all go.
Get there as fast as you can, Colonel.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so the UFO looks largely intact.
About due to control.
Same can't be said for the house.
All right, Colonel. Do what you can.
And here we come to a moment that it took me a very long time to realise on first viewing.
And out of control. Crash landing velocity.
Is that Foster and his co-driver guy don't actually get out of the mobile.
It's a house.
And this shot is inside is meant to be inside the mobile, and the glass fractures as the debris from the exploding UFO hits the mobile window. It's not immediately obvious until a much later scene. Anyway, it's shadow jeeps and undercover men all over the place here. And for undercover shadow operatives, of course, they're wearing very 70s, it's all the Nehru jackets and stuff that makes them look even more obvious than anything else might. Anyway, Straker and Freeman have arrived to look at the model.
Quite a mess. For a while it was out of control, yes. But just before impact, it seemed to be fine. It looped that line of trees, smashed straight...
Interesting as well that it's back projection on Straker and Freeman here, both sides of their conversation. But Straker is back projected with a model shot, and Freeman is back projected with it's real life trees and grass outside his window. And here's another very impressive real life set here, the ruin of the Croxley house. And because we only see this set in nighttime, again, it makes the place seem much more atmospheric and much more real than it might have done if it was lit for broad daylight. And it is, I think, rather an iconic shot for this series of just Straker in the ruins of this house, and it really brings home the sort of personal cost of Shadow's war with the aliens. It can just affect
What happened to the pilot? There was just enough...
the most common ordinary people.
And the UFO is completely destroyed?
The largest piece measured 6 inches. We found it embedded in Foster's mobile.
Specifically in the co-driver.
It's too early to say. He's lost a lot of blood. At least he was luckier than the co-driver.
Oh, I called it. Oh, gosh. That was a very callous way to...
She couldn't have known anything about it.
To off the co-driver there.
It must have been instantaneous.
And I like that as well. Alex saying, oh yeah, it was instantaneous, even though we know that it wasn't, because she was looking out the window, she heard the UFO coming in.
Nothing to connect her with UFOs?
Nothing that we know of.
Except that one crashed on top.
That's her husband out there now.
Oh, poor old Croxley. His beautiful model home has been destroyed.
Suppose I better talk to him, Alec.
Sure.
I'd love to know who else was considered for the role of Croxley here, because I can't imagine anyone other than Stratton playing it. It's he's so good at this haunted, tormented, now he's just absolute grief-stricken. Oh, he can barely hold back the tears. This is such a... And Straker's giving him, what's that? Something of his wife's.
I'm sorry.
You killed her. An experimental aircraft crashed into my house.
How did you know that?
I was at the checkpoint when word came through.
If there's anything...
Don't you think you've done enough?
Well, that could have gone better.
How's he taking it?
Hard to tell. He seemed to know exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. I guess it's pretty difficult to find a new way of telling a guy you're sorry.
Maybe I shouldn't have used the finger puppets, Alec.
Oh, hi, Alec. Is that the time?
Yeah, it's time you went home.
I also like with this episode, it seems to cover a longer period of time than most other episodes of UFO.
We combed the ruin and everything for a mile around. We lifted security yesterday.
Yes, I understand Croxley was having psychiatric treatment.
He also left his job. It's hardly surprising after what he's been through.
Yeah, all of that fairly important stuff happened off screen. He definitely had a job at the start of the episode, so this has all happened subsequently.
Spoke to him yesterday.
Since the last scene.
Doctors are very pleased with his progress. He wants to speak to you. He's worried about something.
What?
He wouldn't tell me.
And do you mean to say you called me all the way out here just to tell me that?
Well, I thought you ought to know about it. Surely it's a security matter.
What did he look like?
Well, it's difficult to say. It's just an impression.
Oh, come on now, Paul. Next you'll be telling me.
So Foster's safely in hospital, and I'm sure there's some in the audience who are enjoying the
looking at me. There's this sort of
prolonged shots of his manly chest here, while Straker's helping himself to as much fruit as possible.
You're okay to be moved to our medical center. You'll be close.
Oh God, no, not Dr. Jackson.
You don't believe me, do you?
Not the expert care of Dr. Jackson.
I'll tell you what I think, Paul. If you're well enough to worry, you're well enough to go back to work.
See, even though Foster has got this bandage wrapping round his chest, he's still got his medallion. Is that a medallion or a tag? I don't know. Gonna help himself to some fruit, but oh, that's it. Yeah, rub the fruit on your chest. This is real fan service here for those who like that sort of thing. And someone else who's watching. Someone who looks a bit like Croxley dressed up as a doctor. Miss Eland has got a parcel.
Morning, Miss Eland.
Mr. Straker of Harlington Straker Studios that's got about 1 million stamps on it.
Somebody wanted to make sure that got here.
It's probably a film script. It's addressed to you, Paul.
In a film studio? This is you surprise me, Miss Eland.
Should not go unrewarded. Whoever sent it certainly knows how to draw attention to them.
Although I am surprised that
I'll pass it along to the script department.
Stuff like that actually comes direct to Straker, considering he's got so many other things to do, like, you know, running Shadow, that someone hasn't, that he hasn't insisted that stuff just not come to him at all. Anyway, Foster's now out and about and back in Shadow Control.
How long's it been as quiet as this?
Since you went into hospital.
That was a month ago. I mean, there've been no sightings since then.
But yeah, this episode covers a month.
We managed to scratch along with
That's very unusual, not only for this show, but for any Anderson show, to cover such a massive amount of time. But
feeling better?
There's something different.
Good. In my office?
Oh, this is sudden. Oh, you mean reports and things.
Well, are you fit for duty, Paul?
Yes, sir. Schroeder checked me out an hour ago.
Good.
Oh, Dr. Schroeder still exists, does he, Paul? Oh, I thought we dealt with that.
The medical center security is tighter than a drum, anyway.
Oh, I see. And your little friend, he couldn't get in, eh?
So Straker's having breakfast in his office here. I do like this. You see it in Destruction as well, that Straker has a really good, really hearty breakfast. He's got 4 slices of toast.
I want you to go over to the Zeta tracker station.
Oh, that may actually be all of it, but
let's come up with a new.
I like that breakfast is a proper
something in it.
Proper enjoyable ritual for Straker.
By the way, what's that?
Oh, I assume this is a film script.
Well, why don't you open it and find out?
Ah, you have bested me again, Alec. I'll do just that. And I believe this prop script that Straker is now flicking through is actually the script for the episode Confetti Check A-OK, which was the previous episode in production order. So Straker is basically now reading the script of a UFO episode, which is ironic considering that he is actually reading the script for UFO, as we'll discover in the next scene. Croxley has written the whole organisation up, and has even found time to not only do that, but actually stop by the studio to point a gun at Paul Foster. Adding to Foster's paranoia, and I think this is maybe a step too far in the story, considering it's a nice little spooky moment for Paul, but it doesn't really. I know that he partly must hold Foster responsible for being at least at the scene of his wife's death. Oh dear. I find that shot of Straker's office doors opening and this close up on a grinning Freeman rather endearingly doofy.
Has Alec Freeman left the building?
No, sir, he's with me now.
Well, have him come back down here immediately.
Yes, sir.
I'm on my way. What is it?
Read it, Alec. Just read it. The Shadow Organization. Colonel Alec Freeman, moon base, skydiver, everything.
I love that. I love that Croxley has somehow pulled up everything.
Possible. How could anybody...
How should I know? Security leak.
Does it say what happened to Captain Carlin? Or any other characters who've disappeared?
The dossier on Shadow. Its operatives, installations, equipment.
It even says that you're going to disappear quite soon, Alec, with no explanation.
John Croxley.
The man whose house was hit by a UFO?
Yes.
No, the other John Croxley. No.
How did he get that information?
The whole thing's ridiculous. We checked him out and his wife. Mr. and Mrs. Average.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Average threw me across the car like a rubber doll. Hey, wait a minute. Foster's little man in the hospital. That could be Croxley, too.
My laundry was late back this week. That could be Croxley, too.
And you say Croxley stopped coming to see you?
I also like on this sign of...
Quite certainly.
The sign in the building where Dr. Brunner works. There's a jet car hire firm as well. Which makes me think of the jet air car from Joe 90.
Normally divulge such details about my patients, but with your...
It must have been harder to work the sort of futuristic elements into the live action scenes. In a model shot you can have a flying car, no problem, but it's not something you can quite pull off as well in the live action side of things. So it's nice that they slipped in those little futuristic mentions, if not glimpses as such.
Of sensing what is going to happen. It affects different people in different ways. Some adjust quickly and make good use of their powers.
And Croxley?
He is not one of the lucky ones. It is driving him to mental illness. His powers of perception are so pronounced he can hold a complete conversation with someone without that person uttering a single word. He can anticipate, he can, how shall I say, feel the future, to the point of mental breakdown when simple everyday phrases take on a new and terrible meaning.
Yes, well, most of it is clear now, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Croxley phoned here for you earlier today.
And?
For some unexplained reason, he wants you and Mr. Freeman to meet him at the ruin of his house at 10 tonight.
Oh dear.
We're early.
So Straker and Freeman have arrived at the wreck of the Croxley household. They are in the studio, sitting in the car with the back projection. Again, it's models on Straker's side and real life on Freeman's side. But it also, there was a shot of the car outside the house for real, and it probably wasn't obvious at the time or on video or even on DVD, but in HD you can see that's very clearly not Straker and Freeman sat at the wheel. And the guy playing Straker looked to have a wig very unceremoniously just sort of plonked on top of his head.
Against his wishes or try to trap him, he'll know about it.
Yep, so Straker and Freeman have decided this is one of those we've got to face the problem ourselves things. No bringing along extra security or anything to face Croxley. They've got to do it themselves.
Listen, Paul, you went through a pretty rough experience.
And here's the fourth and final appearance of Dr. Schroeder, played by Maxwell Shaw, who had been largely AWOL from the series he'd been in the first 3 episodes and then just disappeared. I think Shaw was having surgery.
I'm sure of it.
So it's nice to see him randomly turn up again. I think he gets mentioned once more after this and then just joins the ranks of the many shadow operatives who just vanished into thin air. And of course, pretty much all shadow medical
get some rest.
Problems and situations were handled by Dr. Jackson after this. Anyway, Schroeder's just talked Foster into going back to the house. There's a little wave buzzing on a monitor there in Schroeder's office, and we see that, hooray, the cat has survived. The cat has survived the UFO crash. And of course, with a later episode, The Cat with 10 Lives, we learn that the aliens can take possession of cat bodies. So I do wonder if that cat has survived the UFO crash for a particular purpose, possibly. Yeah, again, I get from a dramatic standpoint why Straker and Freeman have to go alone, because, hero's got to go and face the problem. But, Straker is far too important to the organisation to risk on something like this. It makes me wonder what would have happened if they just hadn't gone there at all and tried to carry on as normal, but I suppose since he knows everything, they kind of have to deal with the security risk.
Croxley. The answer to your question is no. Why should I give you my gun?
And this whole sequence of Straker and Freeman being held essentially hostage by Croxley delivers several really interesting moments, not only for the series generally, but also for the characters of Straker and Freeman. There's a couple of really sweet little insights, thanks to Croxley's ESP. That's it, disarming them both.
You prefer the right hip, I believe, Colonel. Slowly, you have a more devious thought pattern.
I like that. I like that little hint into Freeman's mind, because Freeman seems the more, well, not innocent of the two, but it's hard to imagine anyone being more devious than Straker, and yet supposedly Freeman is. I wish we could have seen more of devious Freeman, really.
The aliens, Croxley. They've taken over your mind. They killed your wife. They're using you. Can't you see why? They're using you to kill us.
And again, Ed Bishop is doing such a great job here, and of course Stratton is just... He keeps going to pieces and then he recovers his strength and you're not sure whether it's him or the aliens coming through. And this, pulling a gun on Straker.
Croxley, for God's sake.
Mother? You're thinking about your mother. Stop it.
That's another interesting insight. Straker's mother. What was she like? Presumably she's been dead for many years. I don't think we saw anyone who could be a mother at his wedding, but
at midnight.
It does conjure up a lot of possible images in the mind of what Straker's mother was like and what his relationship with her could be.
Come through that door and I'll blow your head off.
I think it's the only time in the series we ever hear any mention of Straker's family beyond his ex-wife and son.
You say you want someone to help you.
And here we go.
Our planet is dying. Our national resources are exhausted. We must come to Earth. We must come to Earth to survive.
That still sends a shiver down my spine. That sudden, unexpected verbal communication from the aliens.
Try anything. Over there.
And obviously, we can't be sure how much of this is genuinely them and how much of it is Croxley's brain.
What you got for lunch?
Playing tricks on him as he's regressing to childhood here as well.
No one told me. No, don't hit me. No.
You can see just how much this has been bothering him all his life. And he shoots Straker in the hand. Ooh, nasty stuff.
We mean no harm to peoples of Earth. Why do you attack us? We're fighting for existence. You must understand.
And as much as I wish we could have ever heard the aliens, understood a bit more about who they were before they took up, coming to Earth and snatching people for organs, I kind of like that this is the only, or the closest we get to direct communication with them throughout the series. Anyway, 2 shots are fired. Croxley's doing the whole stand on the spot and then fall down thing, because Foster showed up to save the day. Now, originally, this ending was going to be a bit more action-packed than that. It was going to be a full-on gunfight. Foster was going to show up, Croxley would see him, start firing. He'd hit Foster, I think, and in the vibrations of all the gunfire would basically cause the house to collapse, and Straker and Freeman and Foster only just escaped, but Croxley didn't.
What did you think, Alec?
And this is a simpler ending.
You saw Foster appear behind Croxley.
But I think it's slightly more effective.
He could read our thoughts.
Yes. I'll always believe that in the last few seconds, Croxley regained control of his own mind.
It's not as exciting an ending, but it is more in keeping with the tone of the piece and the character as well, of essentially a good but tormented man being pushed to the brink, and finally, in the last moment, he's when he finally falls, he smiles on the way down, like he's finally been put out of his misery and he's grateful for it.
Well, here's to fate and fear.
Strange toast.
Not really.
But I'll drink to anything, so...
What brought Paul Foster to that house?
And Croxley. Fate had him marked from the moment he was born.
How much of his power did he gain from the aliens?
And how many other Croxleys are there in the world?
How many more can we crash UFOs on top of?
It was fate and fear.
Yes. It's fear of the unknown which helps us...
Oh, this is actually a rare, very rare sight of Straker drinking.
Be fear that helps us recognize them.
Normally, he refuses it. Normally, it's Alec who's chugging down the booze, but Straker actually had a sip there. Very rare. And that's it. Croxley's script has gone into the vaporizer, and that was ESP, which is an episode I remember not really enjoying too much when I first saw it as a kid. I was watching it on BBC repeats in, I think, 95-ish, and of course after this episode they stopped showing it for a while. But it's one of those episodes that I've come to appreciate more as I get older. Again, it's not too much of the exciting space battles and all that stuff that I preferred as a kid. There's a little bit of that in there, especially the lovely model work of the UFO crashing into the Croxley home. But I think it's an episode that's not perfect, but it's one of the stronger ideas that UFO ever presented. A tantalising glimpse of the thought of communication with the aliens, and a marvellous guest performance there from John Stratton as poor old John Croxley. I think in retrospect I would have liked maybe one or two more episodes of UFO in a similar vein to this.
UFO, ESP, ASAP,
AKA,
AKA RSVP, RESPACT. Thank you, Chris Dale, for that. A lovely bit of UFO. I'm sure that'll be popular amongst our Podsterons.
Absolutely. I don't remember the last time we had a UFO episode. It's quite a while, isn't it?
I can't remember without referring to the master list of previous randomizers. I shall probably have to do that later.
Yeah, I would. Yes, well, join us again next week for another randomizer. We don't know what it'll be because it's random.
It is.
It really is.
Entirely random.
It is random.
Yeah. All thanks to Chris, Marina, and the randomizer.
That's right. And of course, you can subscribe, Jamie, to the randomizer in and of itself. Can you not?
And to get rid of us, just search for Gerry Anderson Randomizer with the English spelling, as in an S in randomizer, not a Z. And you can listen to them from the very beginning. Chris is putting up one a week there, right from the beginning of our run, so you can listen to the randomizer all by itself without two idiots talking other nonsense, sandwiching it.
Fair enough.
That's us, by the way, in case you weren't sure.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought you meant Brian Cox and Robin. No.
Rude.
No,
well, it's fine. The entry's in the can now, so you can be as rude as you like.
True enough.
Right, okay, Space Precinct Unmasked next week. Do drop us a line, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk with your questions and thoughts. Please subscribe and leave us a review and a rating or a rating if you're doing them too, on whatever podcast platform you like. Even if you want to go onto Podchaser, for example. Even if you don't use that, we'd love a rating there. And that's it, I think. Is that it? Are you done?
I think that's it, Jamie. Yeah, I'm done.
I'm done. Right.
All right.
Listeners done too, so thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Would you like me to read out a recent review, Richard James?
Is it favourable?
Well, I don't know yet. I should have checked this in advance before
that's
saying I do
dangerous.
it. Hang on.
Even you haven't read it.
No, I haven't read it, but I'm scrolling down right now to see if we've got any new ones.
All right. Go on then.
Here we go. Yes.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of people leaving for us. Right, well, here we go. This is from Yorkie Bites 24.
Okay.
Richard James should immediately leave this... No, sorry.
What?
No. Such a great listen, says Yorkie Bites. Listen to several of these, and they're always great. So jam-packed with cool features like FAB Facts, news, and of course the Randomiser, my personal favourite. Love the celebrity interviews and to hear them discussing their memories and thoughts about Gerry Anderson universe. And love the hosts. Well done, Jamie, Richard, and Chris. Keep up the fab work. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, that's cheered me up no end. Oh, lovely.
Thank you very much, Yorkie Bites.
Yes.
Much love, much appreciated.
Great.
And
that is nice.
Well, let's
hope
for a few more of those. That was left yesterday.
On Apple Podcast, was it?
On Apple Podcasts, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to hang on. I'm going to just leave one of my leaving one of my own. It's Richard N. James, loving the podcast. Richard James should get his own feature. 5 stars.
He's already got his own feature.
Hey,
it's Space Precinct Unmasked next week.
Something to look forward to.
You better get reading it. Go.
All right. Bye.
Go on. Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.